The fires tearing through our landscape are not natural and they're not caused by climate change. Here's why, and here's what we can do to stop them. So we're co-creating a land and people regeneration project in Portugal, reviving ecosystems and reinventing how we work, live, relate and give.
Wait, what did you say?
A small-scale version of what the whole planet can be.
In the last update, we shared our biggest challenges so far. This update was going to be about creating access to a temporary piece of land we took care of, building a demountable deck and building a forest staircase. But then, in the night after my son arrived from the Netherlands to be with me, I decided to evacuate. Not because our base camp, currently located on the grounds of a sister project, was in direct danger, but because of the smoke and the ashes flying around and my son's lungs. With help from the sister project's crew, I dismantled the caravan, hooked it up to the car, put my sleeping son in the passenger seat and drove towards clean air. The others stayed behind to keep an eye out and to assist around the village. When 4 days later we returned, our grounds had been spared, but many around us had not.
It's pretty, isn't it? Over here I've decided to kind of store our ash, and a little over there too.
When we got the call to leave because the fire was coming over here, we were about to get trapped. We still had the pipe in our hands where we were starting to move the water to the locations that we really wanted, like big irrigation pipes to try to get the land wet. And it wasn't in response to the fire, it was something we had already been doing. But unfortunately the fire was faster than we were, much faster.
We're rising from the ashes and joining hands in repair and regeneration work. But if we want that work to work, we need to bust some deeply rooted myths. Because tragic as these fires are, they are not inevitable, and the solutions are much easier and closer than most people think.
1, 2, 3, black is the new grey!
So in this update, we're going to deconstruct some myths, look at what's really fueling the flames, and offer solutions tried and proven to prevent these tragedies and bring our ecosystems back to a state of paradise. First, a word on firefighting. I deeply respect people who risk their lives to combat the flames that threaten home, people, animals, and landscapes. But I also feel grief, because when it comes to wildfires, they're fighting a losing, symptomatic battle. We need the courage to face what's really going on and undo the root causes if we want to make a change that actually changes things. So let's start with wildfires are natural and inevitable, and we just have to learn to deal with them. No. In the country I hail from, the Netherlands, we call these fires nature fires, but they are anything but natural. Almost all of these fires are human-caused, either directly through arson or indirectly through careless behavior, poor planning, and neglect. As one of my mentors, Zach Weiss, says,
"The only thing wild about these fires is that they're totally out of control. There's nothing natural about these disasters. We shouldn't call them wildfires."
Fires used to return to landscapes once every few decades or even centuries, depending on the ecosystem, but not year after year. Indigenous people have long used low-intensity prescribed burns, creating hydrophilic char that holds water and actually supports the ecosystem. But today's super hot fires create hydrophobic char that repel water and further weaken the ecosystems that are already under stress. So yes, fire has always been a part of life, but the intensity and frequency of these super hot fires we're encountering today, they are not normal. And normalizing them is dangerous. Which brings me to insofar as we think we can know what's going on with the climate on our planet, climate change does not start fires. When you turn up the heat in your home, do your plants spontaneously combust? When you enter a sauna, does your towel suddenly go up in flames? Do tropical forests in areas where it's considerably hotter for longer periods than here in the Mediterranean have more fires than we do? They don't. At least not naturally. In areas where humans are actively destroying tropical forests, it's a different story. Even with rising temperatures, a healthy forest can stay cool, moist, and resilient. Anyone who's ever walked from a healthy forest onto a dune on a blistering hot day knows the difference. Yeah, okay, but what about CO2? Because if we reduce carbon emissions by so and so much, all our problems will go away, right? No. The overwhelming majority of our planet's heat dynamics are not governed by carbon, they're governed by water, and specifically by the evaporation of water. What happens when we log entire forests, drain wetlands, pave landscapes, and straighten waterways? Zach Weiss puts it plainly.
Each year, we lose an estimated 370 cubic kilometers of water from the small water cycle. That's 250,000 terawatt hours of cooling potential that we lose each year. Now, how much is that? That's almost 10 times as much energy as is produced each year globally.
Healthy ecosystems are not just carbon sinks, they are Earth's air conditioners. We need them to stay cool and clear. Now, I'm going to make a bold statement, even though I'll probably get a lot of stick for it. CO2, even less than being the problem, is not a problem. Carbon is Earth's main source of food, and I don't believe that fossil fuel use is inherently destructive. It's our disconnection from nature and the systems we build that determine whether carbon helps life grow or fuels destruction. Which brings me to a fragile point. Nature is not fragile. When it comes to teaching us about resilience, nothing compares. But even the strongest systems have their limits. So instead of treating nature like a porcelain vase that breaks with every single little touch, we need to start recognizing it for what it is. Powerful, adaptive, part of us. If we don't, it's going to be us that are no longer going to be around to see its recovery. So that's 3 of the biggest myths debunked. On to the next chapter. This question too is wrapped in myths. A common one is that some plants are inherently fire safe while others are fire bombs. Well, as fellow water freak Nick Steiner explains with a well-hydrated plant,
Do you see this? Nothing.
and a dried out plant,
You see this? You see this?
almost any plant will burn if it's dry. So instead of blaming the tree, we should look at the systems they are growing in. Monoculture plantations like the eucalyptus and pine trees in Portugal are not forests. They are desert ecosystems often maintained with toxic herbicides. Closed canopies formed by trees of the same age, height and spacing dry the understory, block sunlight and prevent other species from growing. In contrast, hydrated plants in biodiverse, multi-story ecosystems resist ignition. So even if the eucalyptus was a stubborn fire bomb, it wouldn't be able to spread havoc like it so often does now because it would be surrounded by fire-stopping greenery. Now for another myth. Floods have nothing to do with fires. They are separate, unrelated events. The truth is, they are two sides of the same coin. If rainwater cannot infiltrate because, for instance, the soil's been plowed and compacted as a result, it will run off, wash away the topsoil and leave an eroded landscape to bake in the sun, evaporating whatever moisture is left by the rain, creating an incredibly fire-prone area that, when it inevitably burns, is reduced to ash that is washed away when the next rains come, together with even more soil, worsening the drought and setting the stage for a next fire, leading to a spiral of desertification. In short, the more desertified our landscapes, the more intense the floods, the more desertified our landscapes. Now, to come back to firefighters, I love firefighters. I'm in awe of their courage and grateful for their response in crisis situations. But if we treat them as our only line of defense, we disempower them, ourselves, and the nature around us. We can do many very simple things to prevent fires from happening in and around our homes. And when it comes to our so-called wildfires, I see only one real firefighter. Nature in all its glorious, lush, biodiverse, moisture-retaining brilliance. I'm going to go into 7 tried and proven solutions via the myths that try to hide these solutions. These are just about the last things we need. Most of them don't work, only serve to enrich corporations, and even if they did work, they would be no match for what nature already knows how to do. So the most high-tech thing we can do is to stop destructive cycles and revive natural ones. Help rainfall infiltrate. Slow, spread, and sink water into the ground. Rebuild soil as a water-holding sponge. Restore wetlands, reforest, mulch the soils,
Não, o quê?
Nós vamos aí e vamos aqui.
Então o que é que... Ah!
etc. This will increase carbon absorption to levels no human-made facility could ever match simply by working with Earth's true climate system, water. This myth says that vegetation is the main fire hazard, which to me is like saying that human bodies are the main cause of human disease, when the honest thing would be to say, I'm weak, I need to stop going to McDonald's every day and start exercising. Conscious forest management through pruning, spacing, and removing the lower branches of trees, something grazing animals do really well, helps mitigate fire risk and improves ecosystem health. But so-called thinning projects, in the words of Chad Hansen, author of the book Smokescreen,
most of that happens under deceptive euphemisms like forest health and fuel reduction. That's just masking the same old logging that was done in the 1970s and 1980s.
In most cases, so-called thinning projects do not lead to less fires, they lead to more fires. And the extracted wood, shipped to timber factories and so-called biomass electricity plants, like this one in central Portugal, seen here under construction, and a blatant example of greenwashing. This myth too blames vegetation, but after the tragic fires of 2025 in California, what did we see? Many trees standing tall and green, with homes in between them burnt to the ground. Why? Because overclearing dry soils encourages so-called flashy weeds that grow quickly, dry out even quicker, ignite instantly and burn fast and hot. And it exposes houses to wind-driven embers, the true ignition triggers. So, how do we fireproof homes? 1. By maintaining them. Clearing gutters, vents and decks that accumulate organic matter like fallen leaves, and improving buildings with things like ember-resistant vents and fire-rated roofs. 2, by selective clearing. The areas closest to our homes are critical for firefighter access. Anything beyond that doesn't really help and only damages ecosystems. It's even been shown that healthy, fire-retardant trees against homes protect them instead of conduct the fire. The third thing we can do, regenerative landscaping. Applying water retention earthworks like ponds and terraces, planting fire-resistant trees, reforesting desiccated lands, and managing it in a way that allows it to stay moist, fresh and green even during dry periods. In the case of the 2025 California fires, simple ponds, terraces and plantings implemented by Zach Weiss and his team saved homes from both fires and landslides. In the same California, a landscape contractor named Greg Rubin, who gave some of the tips I just mentioned, has seen 25 of his projects endure wildfires. All of them survived. This one seems logical, but Pete and Kate Marshall's truffle farm in Australia tells a different story. They survived fire after fire, not through clearing, but through water retention practices and by planting deciduous fire buffering trees like poplars, willows, hazel, oak, and bamboo. These trees released moisture during the fires, cooling the air, reducing fire intensity, and protecting the land. Neighboring farms with wide, cleared fire breaks all burned. A clear example of how in the case of these unnatural and out-of-control fires, there's only one real firefighter. Supposedly, invasive species are harmful to the environment and they need to be eradicated, while native species are the saviors of the environment and we need to reintroduce them. I see two problems here. One, I would say that every native tree was once an invasive, and every invasive species may at one time have been a native. Two, nature doesn't preserve, it adapts and transforms. The Australian farmers I just mentioned demonstrated that exotics can serve a vital role in fire management, soil building, and water retention. They too reject the nativist ideology, arguing for function over origin. If a tree can provide shade, hold water, cool the air and prevent fire, well then it's golden, mate. Contrast this to the Australian government's approach, insisting on, for instance, willow being a noxious weed, trying to eradicate it with poison, and ignoring the willow's vital role in stabilizing areas along waterways, retaining water in the landscape, and providing wildlife habitat. Another pretty stubborn idea. Soil cover, also called mulch, and dead wood are a fire hazard. The truth is, it depends. Loose, fluffy mulch with lots of air pockets dries quickly and burns instantly. Here's an example given by a dear friend days after his and his partner's land got incinerated.
Those cleared areas burnt worse. All the debris was just left on the ground. It's turned and seasoned into dry firewood. It burned worse than the areas that were completely unmanaged. And it's just...
Fluffy mulch, whether created intentionally or not, is not a solution. But consolidated, well-hydrated mulch, chopped, dropped, and settled, acts like a sponge, feeds the soil, retains moisture, and resists flames. Burning organic matter is not an answer, and moving it only makes sense when it clearly improves safety and ecosystem health. This idea leans on the belief that human presence is inherently destructive, which is a dangerous belief because it feeds a guilt-tripping narrative that gets us stuck in crippling taglines like minimizing our footprint. We don't need to minimize our footprint. We need to optimize it. We need to see ourselves as an incredibly useful keystone species in the regeneration of landscapes and water cycles. And despite our colonial efforts to eradicate indigenous wisdom and science, we still have living examples. For example, Rajendra Singh, known as the Waterman of India, once dug a water body in a village that had dried up. Water came back not only to the water body but to the soil around it. This allowed people to return to their ancestral grounds and once again make a life with agriculture and help the water further charge the underground aquifer. "35 years later, Rajendra and his team have helped communities in the Indian state of Rajasthan, one of the driest regions on earth, to revive 7 rivers to perennial flow, lift the water table by 5 meters, bring water back to 250,000 wells, reduce average temperatures in the region by 2 degrees centigrade, and increase greenery from a miserable 2% to 48%. So big projects may play their role, but our biggest projects will grow from decentralized planting and water retention practices, from communities trained in land rehydration, and from lots of people cultivating lots of little ecosystems everywhere that cycle water, cool the air, prevent fire, and grow into gardens of Eden. Well, yeah, it will if we keep going like this. And if we do, humanity will not live to see it happening. But we can change course and see the results in our lifetime. When we partner with animal life, plant systems, and water, when the first rains come, we will see water infiltrate instead of run off. The next summer, we will see more water being retained. And every year, we will see life come to life through our actions. Within a decade, we can be the first-hand experiencers of lush, cool microclimates. When we get to know ourselves as an important and valuable life form, we cultivate optimism, empowerment, and connection. Which brings me to the root of our misery. It's not CO2, it's not vegetation, it's a lie. The lie that we are something separate from nature. Because when we buy into that story, we also buy into the fear-based story of there's not enough. So what determines our actions is not the tools we hold, money being one of them, it's how we look at ourselves, each other, and the planet. Believing in lack turns us into hoarders. Knowing life's innate abundance makes us generous. In both cases, we reap what we sow. It's an incredibly simple law of nature, no spiritual training needed and no airy-fairiness required. It only asks one thing of us, that we become honest. That's it for this update, our most manifesto update so far, with links in this episode's description of mentors, inspiration,
Hello, Mundo.
tried and proven solutions, and detailed explanations of how to implement them. We'll keep sharing as we learn, apply, grow, and teach. So if this inspired you, please share this video and help others find it. Hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, or better yet, come join us at the Miracle Project Insights platform. It's an open space where you'll find free updates, deep dives, and ways to support our work, from becoming a paying member to joining our team. To join, visit www.insights.miracleproject.earth. You'll find a link in this episode's description. Until next time.
No.